There's something magical about that sound. The rain against the rooftops, thunder echoing across a kingdom asleep. You don't know what's coming, but you can feel it. A world on edge with something greater. A boy about to wake up into destiny. Even before you press a button, A Link to the Past feels alive. The storm outside, the rumble of thunder, the soft glow of candlelight, it all whispers of an adventure already in motion. You're not starting a story, you're stepping into one that's been waiting for you. Before Ocarina of Time, before Breath of the Wild, there was this. A 16-bit legend born on the Super Nintendo, the game that didn't just define what Zelda could be, but what adventure itself could feel like. It's the moment that Zelda became Zelda. Not just a series of experiments, but a myth reborn, a formula perfected. A world that would inspire an entire generation of game designers. When it released in 1991, A Link to the Past was more than just another sequel. It was Nintendo reclaiming the soul of the original Legend of Zelda. The sense of mystery, danger, and wonder that came from simply wandering. But this time, it was built on a new canvas. A world larger, richer, and more intricate than anything players had seen before. Gone were the cryptic frustrations of the Nintendo Entertainment System era. In their place, balance, clarity, flow. The design of A Link to the Past felt intentional, precise, like every path, secret, and item existed to guide you forward without ever telling you what to do. It was the perfect blend of structure and freedom, teaching you through exploration instead of instruction. But beyond the gameplay and the puzzles, there was something else. It was a feeling. The sense that you were part of something ancient. A story told through dungeons and melodies, through silence and discovery. It wasn't loud or cinematic, it was intimate, patient, and deeply human. This was a game that understood pacing before we had the language for it. It knew when to challenge you, when to let you breathe, and when to reward curiosity with a secret passage or a heart piece hidden just out of reach. It turned exploration into emotion. Every Zelda that followed, from Link's Awakening to Ocarina of Time, from A Link Between Worlds to Tears of the Kingdom, traces its lineage back to A Link to the Past. The dual worlds, the puzzle-based dungeons, the idea that every corner of the map hides a story. It all began in A Link to the Past. Even now, decades later, it stands as one of the most elegant examples of design in gaming history. There are flashier titles, bigger worlds, more complex mechanics, but few games feel as complete as this one. Every pixel, every note, every secret feels like it belongs exactly where it should be. And more than 30 years on, A Link to the Past remains timeless. Not because of nostalgia, but because it captures something that technology cannot replicate, and that is the joy of discovery, the quiet satisfaction of progress, and the thrill of seeing a world unfold before your eyes. This is the story of how a 16-bit adventure became the foundation of a legend, how it took the simplicity of a fairy tale and built a world that would outlive its creators, its console, and its era. This is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, the game that defined not only a franchise, but an entire philosophy of adventure. Well, first of all, today we have the state of Zelda before 1991. So in the late 1980s, The Legend of Zelda was already a phenomenon. First game, released in 1986, felt like nothing else. An open world before the term even existed. It dropped players into a land full of secrets, dangers offering no map, no guidance, no explanation, just curiosity and courage. For millions, it was the first time a video game had felt like a world instead of a level. But then came Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. It was a bold experiment that tried to push the series in a new direction. side-scrolling combat, experience points, and RPG mechanics. Now, it wasn't a bad game, it was just very divisive. For some, it was too punishing, too strange, too far removed from the spirit of the original. For others, it was fascinating, proof that Nintendo wasn't afraid to take risks. Still, it left the series at a crossroads. By the end of the decade, Nintendo had moved into a new era. The Famicom and the Nintendo Entertainment System had transformed the company into a global powerhouse, and expectations for what their next console could deliver were absolutely enormous. The Super Nintendo wasn't just more powerful, it was a promise: bigger worlds, better sound, deeper stories, and for the Zelda team that meant one thing: it was time to go back. Shigeru Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka, and their team wanted to recapture the feeling of the first Zelda, that raw sense of discovery, but bring it into life in a way that only 16-bit technology could allow. The Nintendo Entertainment System had forced them to simplify everything: the world, the story, even the atmosphere. Now they had colour, texture, and sound. They could finally make Hyrule feel alive. But there was pressure too. After the divisive response to Zelda 2, this next game couldn't just be good, it had to restore faith in the Zelda series. It had to remind players why Zelda mattered in the first place. The mission wasn't to reinvent the wheel, but to perfect it, to create something that felt both familiar and entirely new. And beneath all that, there was an unspoken challenge. How do you make a game that feels open and mysterious, but never confusing? How do you create a story that feels epic, but never gets in the way of play? These were questions that no one had really answered yet, because no one else was making games quite like The Legend of Zelda. The team's vision was simple but ambitious: take an open-ended adventure of the first game, blend it with the narrative structure of modern storytelling, and make every moment, every screen, feel meaningful. The goal wasn't just to make a great sequel, it was to build the ultimate version of Zelda, the one they'd always imagined, but had never quite been able to create. When development began in the late 1980s, few could have imagined how important this project would become. It wasn't just another title for the Super Nintendo launch window, this was Nintendo's statement, a declaration that video games could tell legends, not just stories, and it was a world made of pixels that could still feel like a place you've lived in. By the time A Link to the Past was finished, it had evolved far beyond anyone's expectations. But before we get there, before we talk about the dual worlds and its groundbreaking design and its quiet emotional power, we have to look at how it was made, because behind the brilliance lies a development story filled with doubt, determination, and discovery. Next up today, we've got building a better Hyrule. So when work began on A Link to the Past, the Zelda team wasn't just making another fantasy adventure, they were rebuilding a world, a mythology, from the ground up. What began as a small, ambitious project on the Super Famicom soon became one of the most important creative undertakings in Nintendo's history. Shigeru Miyamoto, already a legend for Mario and Donkey Kong, served as the producer. Takashi Tezuka, his longtime collaborator, took on the role as director, and between them they shared a vision to take the raw, unpolished magic of the original Legend of Zelda and craft it into something timeless. Something that felt like a story passed down through generations, even if it was made of pixels and made of code. Not everyone on the team was eager to return to Hyrule. According to interviews years later, some developers were hesitant, even frustrated at being assigned another Zelda title. The series was already established, and the challenge of reinventing it on new hardware felt daunting. How do you improve on a game that's already considered a classic? How do you make something familiar feel new again? The answer came from a philosophy that would define Nintendo's design ethos for decades: iteration through intuition. The team didn't start with a grand story or a long list of mechanics, they started with feel. What does it feel like to explore a world without a map? To solve a puzzle that suddenly makes perfect sense? To find something hidden, not because the game told you to, but because you were curious enough to look? One of the biggest breakthroughs came early in development, the idea of two interconnected worlds, the light world and the dark world. At first, it was just a technical experiment, a way to double the map size, but as the team explored the concept, it became the heart of the game's identity. Two realms, mirrored but changed. Every victory had a shadow, every discovery had a reflection. It wasn't just clever design, it was thematic. It turned the game's structure into its storytelling. The Super Nintendo hardware made it all possible. The team used new tricks like seamless scrolling, detailed tile maps and layered parallax backgrounds to make Hyrule feel alive. For the first time, they could create forests that felt dense, dungeons that felt oppressive, and storms that felt real. It was all still 2D, but it felt three-dimensional, not in space, but in spirit. Miyamoto famously pushed for accessibility. He wanted A Link to the Past to be a game that anyone could play, but few could master. The goal wasn't difficulty, it was clarity. If you got stuck, the problem was never the game's fault. It was yours to solve. Every clue was there, hidden in plain sight. Every secret was a reward for paying attention. Music and sound played a vital role. Composer Koji Kondo crafted themes that became iconic. The triumphant overworld theme, the mysterious dungeon motif, the soft melancholy of the dark world. These weren't just songs, they were emotional cues, guiding players through tone alone. When you drew the Master Sword for the first time, the sound itself became a memory, one players would never forget. As the project grew, so did the ambition. The world became larger, the dungeons more complex, the story deeper. But what's remarkable is how cohesive it all felt. Even today, A Link to the Past doesn't feel like a game designed by committee. It feels authored. Every choice, every pixel, every secret chest seems to exist for a reason. And perhaps that's because it wasn't made with spectacle in mind, it was made with care. The team wasn't trying to chase trends or outdo competitors, they were building something true. A game that embodied the best of what Zelda had been and the promise of what it could become. And by the time A Link to the Past released in 1991 in Japan and in 1992 in the West, it was clear they had done more than just make a sequel. They had created the definitive Legend of Zelda game, the one that set the standard for everything that followed. From its multi-layered world to its elegant structure, its perfect pacing and emotional depth, this was the blueprint. You know, it's easy to call it a masterpiece now, decades later, but what makes A Link to the Past remarkable isn't just how well it plays, it's how human it feels. You can sense the care in every detail, the craft in every line of code, the love for adventure that pulses through every note of music. This was the game that turned Zelda from a great idea into a living legend. And it all began with the team that believed that adventure, true adventure, should feel like discovering something that's always been waiting for you. Well, next up, let's have a look at the dual world design and the genius of two realities. So when players talk about A Link to the Past, they often mention one thing before anything else. The worlds. Not one, but two. The light world and the dark world. Two versions of Hyrule that feel connected, but completely different in tone, mood, and meaning. It's one of the most ambitious ideas in game design history, and somehow it felt effortless. You don't even realise how revolutionary it is at first, you're simply exploring, crossing bridges, clearing dungeons, learning the rhythm of this adventure, and then suddenly you pull a magic mirror from your inventory and the world shifts beneath you. Colours change, music darkens, familiar places twist into something unrecognisable, like stepping into a nightmare version of everything you thought you knew. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was the soul of A Link to the Past. From a design perspective, the dual world system doubled the game's complexity without confusing the player. Every location now had two identities, one in the light world and one in the dark. But more importantly, it turned geography into storytelling. The beautiful fields and forests of Hyrule that became haunted, warped reflections of what once was. Where there had been peace, there's now corruption. The world itself became a mirror of Ganon's influence, spreading like a shadow across everything that you learn to love. For players in 1991, it was just mind-blowing. The moment you realised every inch of Hyrule had a parallel version, the solving puzzles in one world can change the other, it felt infinite. You weren't just exploring a map, you were exploring possibilities. The mirror became more than an item, it was a symbol of your curiosity, of looking beyond the surface. The beauty of this design though is how seamlessly it all fits into the story. The light and the dark worlds aren't just clever game mechanics, they represent the duality, the heart of Zelda itself. Innocence and corruption, order and chaos, light and shadow. Link doesn't just travel between two places, he travels between two realities, and in doing so, he bridges them, he restores the balance. This idea of duality, of two worlds influencing one another, became a foundation for future Zelda games. Ocarina of Time borrowed it with its time travel system, Twilight Princess echoed it through its Twilight Realm. Even Tears of the Kingdom plays with the same concept, the surface and the depths, one world mirroring another. It all started in A Link to the Past. And that is what's remarkable about how natural it feels. There's no heavy exposition, explaining it, no tutorial pop-up holding your hand. The game just trusts you to figure it out, to experiment, to fail, to learn. It's a perfect example of Nintendo's philosophy, design that teaches through play. From an artistic standpoint, the light and the dark world also represent something more personal, a reflection of the player. The light world is the comfort zone, peaceful, familiar, almost idyllic. The dark world, meanwhile, is the unknown, dangerous, unpredictable, and rewarding only to the brave. It's as if the game itself is saying, you can't save Hyrule by staying where it's safe. To grow, you have to cross the boundary to face the darker reflection of the world and yourself. That's another reason why A Link to the Past is so powerful. It's not just about defeating Ganon or collecting items, it's about transformation of the world and of the player. Every time you switch between the light and the dark world, you feel that transformation happening. The same landscape, seen through two lenses, becomes a metaphor for change, for the idea that nothing stays pure forever, and that heroism means navigating both sides of existence. Even today, this design feels elegant, almost poetic. It doesn't rely on spectacle or technology, it's driven by an idea that adventure is about perception, about seeing the familiar in a new light. Few games since have captured it so perfectly. In A Link to the Past, the dual worlds aren't just a mechanic in the game, they're a statement about perspective, consequence, and the fragile balance between what is and what could be. And it's that idea that you can change a world by understanding its reflection that made this game feel so much bigger than this little cartridge. Well, next up we got storytelling and myth, so Zelda as a modern legend. When people remember A Link to the Past, they often think of its dungeons, its puzzles, and its world. But beneath all of that, quietly running through every moment is something deeper. A story that feels timeless. It's a myth. The original Legend of Zelda had story only in whispers. A princess captured, a hero rising, a kingdom in peril. It was archetypal, simple, closer to a bedtime story than a full narrative. But A Link to the Past changed that. It didn't just tell a story, it built one. It gave Zelda a history, a world with gods and ancient wars, and a sense that every adventure was just one chapter in a much larger legend. For the first time, the series introduced us to its own mythology. The creation of Hyrule, the imprisoning war, the sages, and the Master Sword sleeping deep in the forest. It gave meaning to the symbols that we'd already seen, the Triforce, Ganon, and even Link's green tunic. Suddenly these weren't just game pieces, they were part of a legend passed down through generations, like echoes of a forgotten epic. And that's one of the reasons why it's so powerful. A Link to the Past didn't need voice acting or cinematics, its myth was carried through tone, through music, through silence. You didn't need a narrator to tell you the Master Sword was sacred, you felt it, you could see it sitting there in the forest, in the way the forest grew still as you approached it, in the swell of the music as you pulled it free. That's not storytelling through words, that is storytelling through feeling. This was also the first time a Zelda game truly felt tragic. Hyrule wasn't just a kingdom to save, it was a world already broken. The Dark World wasn't just another map, it was a vision of what happens when power corrupts. The people you meet there weren't just enemies, they were victims. Creatures transformed by greed and despair. Even Ganon, in his monstrous form, felt like the embodiment of something human, a hunger for control. You know, in a way, A Link to the Past understood something that few games at the time dared to explore. That heroism isn't just about defeating evil, but restoring a balance. Light doesn't exist without shadow, and courage only means something when there's something real to lose. The writing was sparse, but that was part of the magic. You learned about the world in fragments, through cryptic dialogue, through telepathic tiles, through the stories that villagers told in passing. Each piece made Hyrule feel ancient, lived in, mysterious. It was a place that existed before you got there and would continue after you left. That sense of continuity, that this adventure was part of a greater cycle, would become one of Zelda's defining traits. It's why every game feels both new and familiar. The same hero, the same evil, reborn across time and space. It's not a reboot, it's reincarnation. And A Link to the Past was a moment that idea took shape. Even its title speaks to that theme, A Link to the Past. It's not just a clever pun, it's a statement of purpose. It's about connection to history, to tradition, to the idea that our actions ripple backwards and forwards through time. Link isn't just a name, he's the literal link between generations of heroes, between what was and what will be. And that's what makes this game feel so enduring. It's not just nostalgia, it's resonance. It's the way that the story lingers after the screen fades to black. The way that the music feels like a memory that you can't quite place. The way you remember moments not just because of the dialogue, but because of how they felt. With A Link to the Past, Zelda became more than just a game. It became a legend in the truest sense. A story retold, reshaped and rediscovered over decades. And just like the myths it draws from, its power lies not in the complexity, but in timelessness. You know, the story of The Legend of Zelda isn't just about saving a princess or defeating a monster. It's about the eternal struggle between light and dark, courage and fear, chaos and order, and the quiet truth that somewhere, no matter the age, there will always be someone who picks up that sword. Next up we got the gameplay legacy and the blueprint for the franchise. If A Link to the Past gave Zelda its mythology, it also gave the series a blueprint. This was where the modern design of Zelda, the rhythm, structure, the balance, where it was all born. Every game that followed has built upon this foundation, sometimes expanding it, sometimes rebelling against it, but always returning to it. At its core, A Link to the Past created the language of A Legend of Zelda. It taught players what to expect and what to desire. The overworld became a living puzzle, a place of secrets, patterns and subtle guidance. The dungeons became self-contained stories, each with their own theme, their own atmosphere, and a single powerful item that changed how you saw the world. That formula, dungeon, item, new ability, new possibilities, would go on to define the franchise for more than 20 years. It's deceptively simple but perfect in its pacing. You find an item not just to solve a puzzle, but to see things differently. The hookshot turns obstacles into opportunities, the bombs reward curiosity, and the Pegasus boots turn impatience into progress. Every tool becomes an extension of your imagination. So A Link to the Past never really tells you what to do, but it always shows you what is possible. The game trusts you, not to follow instructions, but to learn through play. You're constantly discovering new rules, new connections, new shortcuts that make the world feel smaller and more intimate and the more that you understand it. It's not just good design, that is empathy from Nintendo. The game meets you where you are and gently teaches you to think like it does. The world itself feels alive with purpose. Every square of Hyrule hides something: a secret cave, a fairy fountain, a lonely boy wanting to play his flute. Exploration isn't a feature, it's the heartbeat of this experience. You're not just completing objectives, you're following your own curiosity, and the game rewards that endlessly. It's the kind of design that feels quite rare now, confident enough to trust silence, patient enough to let discovery happen naturally. The structure of the game was revolutionary for its time. The light world serves as a training ground, familiar, approachable, full of early challenge that teaches you the rules, but once you enter the dark world, everything shifts. You already know how Hyrule works, now you've got to relearn it. Enemies hit harder, puzzles become trickier, and the map you thought you understood reveals new secrets. The perfect metaphor for growth, mastering the familiar before facing its reflection. Even its sense of progression is masterful. Unlike modern games that rely on markers and checklists, A Link to the Past uses visual language and environmental cues. You notice a cracked wall before you've got bombs. You see a cliff before you've got the hookshot. The game plants ideas in your mind long before you can act on them, and when you finally return, then that puzzle clicks. It's not just satisfying, it's personal. You earned it. It also introduced something quietly profound, that feeling of flow. Every great Zelda game has it. That seamless movement between combat, exploration and discovery. There's no friction, no wasted motion. You move through Hyrule like a rhythm, guided by intuition and memory. And even when you get lost, it never feels like failure. It feels like an adventure. This design philosophy became the bedrock of Nintendo's approach for decades. You can see its fingerprints everywhere. In the time travel of Ocarina of Time, in the ocean of Wind Waker, the verticality of Skyward Sword, and even the open freedom of Breath of the Wild. Every one of them carries a little piece of A Link to the Past. The balance between direction and discovery, structure and surprise. But maybe the most enduring legacy of all is the emotion that comes with understanding a world. Not just playing it, but knowing it. When you can walk through Hyrule and recognise every secret, every path, every hidden cave, it feels like coming home. And that is what A Link to the Past has captured. The idea that mastery isn't about power, but about familiarity. The more you play, the more this world becomes yours. And that is why the formula endured for decades. It turned curiosity into progress, patience into reward, and knowledge into power. It made you feel smart. Not just because the game told you that you were, but because you figured it out yourself. In the years that followed, Nintendo would refine and reinvent this structure again and again. But no matter how far the series evolved from 2D to 3D, from linear to open world, the heart of Zelda remained here, in this perfect loop of discovery and understanding. Well, next up, let's have a look at reception and critical legacy. It was perfect then, and perfect now. So when A Link to the Past released in 1991, critics and players alike knew they were experiencing something special. It wasn't just another Nintendo hit, this was a revelation. Reviewers praised its scale, its precision, its sense of adventure. IGN later called it timeless, a game that feels as perfect today as it did on release. Nintendo Life described it as the moment Zelda became a masterpiece. What made the praise universal was how complete it felt. Every part of the experience, the exploration, the pacing, the music, it fit together like clockwork. There was no wasted moments, no filler. It was elegant in a way that few games had ever been. Now, over the years, its reputation has only grown. Critics have revisited it again and again, searching for flaws and finding none that matter. It's still ranked among some of the best games ever made, often cited as the perfect example of balance. A world that's open but never overwhelming, structured but never too restrictive. That's possibly why it has endured all this time. A Link to the Past doesn't rely on nostalgia to stay relevant, it is just simply timeless. A game that even decades later feels alive, still feels right, whether you played it on a CRT in 1992, or on an emulator today, or via Nintendo Switch Online, then that first walk through the rain, that first pull of the Master Sword, still feels the same. So some games age, but this one endures. It was never chasing trends. Well, finally today we've got the emotional core and why A Link to the Past still matters. More than 30 years after release, A Link to the Past still feels alive. Not just a piece of game design, but as an experience that means something. It's not the graphics or the nostalgia that gives it power, it's the feeling. That quiet, impossible magic of stepping into a world that feels like it's been waiting for you. There is a purity to this game that is hard to describe. No tutorials, no quests on a checklist, no endless dialogue. Just you, a sword, and a world that invites you to explore it. It trusts you, and that trust feels rare. The adventure is yours to shape at your own pace, in your own way, and somehow that freedom still feels revolutionary. Every time you revisit A Link to the Past, it feels like opening an old storybook. You remember the rhythm of its music, the patterns of its dungeons, the strange comfort of its world. You know where everything is, and yet still it feels full of mystery. And that is the magic of it. Never stops feeling new, even when you've seen it all. What keeps this game alive isn't just the design perfection, it's heart. Beneath all the clever puzzles and the layered mechanics lies something deeply human. The joy of discovery, the thrill of courage, the warmth of returning home after saving the world. It's simple, but it's powerful. It reminds us that adventure isn't about where we go, but about how it makes us feel. A Link to the Past is more than a great Zelda game, it's the soul of the series. The thread that connects every version of Hyrule, every incarnation of Link, every player who's picked up the controller, stepped into the rain. It's proof that even the simplest of stories, a hero, a sword, a world worth saving, can last forever. These legends don't end, they're passed down, retold and rediscovered, generation after generation. And this one, this legend, still shines just as brightly as it did the day it began. But that is it today for this look back at A Link to the Past. As you can probably tell, it is my favourite Zelda game, and I would love to hear down in the comments your memories, your thoughts about A Link to the Past. I would love to hear what you think. Well, that is it for this video today, and thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. Thanks again, and I shall see you real soon. Well, thank you so much for watching the video, but today I'd like to let you know about the Triforce Times store. If you like Triforce Times content and you want to get some merchandise, then browse the online store today. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and loads more in all shapes and sizes and colours. Also, if you didn't see something on the store that you want, then let me know in the comments. Comment on the video and let me know what you want to see in the merch store, and I will make it happen. So if you enjoy Triforce Times and want to go above and beyond to support, then the store is a great place to do that. And also, you're going to get some high quality merchandise as well, so check out the Triforce Times store today, with a selection of merch below each video, and you can also check out the store link in the description if you'd like to browse the whole store. Well, this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it's time to go back to the video.